Well, congratulations on your film. This is Charlie, and that's Jason, in case you don't recognize him. I want to ask Charlie, how did you come up with the idea for this? What were you thinking?
Is this on? Yeah. So, Justin, my writing partner, we made this film called The One I Love together, and we had just finished shooting the film. And we were driving from Ojai, California to LA, which is about an hour-and-a-half drive. And Justin said, I have a new idea for a film. And I was like, oh, God. It was just relaxed. We literally just wrapped. And he said he'd been thinking about this idea of what if the afterlife was scientifically proven? What would people do? And we just started to kind of go down this rabbit hole of all these different ideas, and I think the idea of is death really death anymore, or are you just constantly living? And then this idea of would people then take their own lives to go to a new place if death wasn't so precious? That became really fascinating to us. So we kind of came up with this big idea, and then started to write the Thomas Harvard character, and we didn't have the other characters figured out yet. So we just started to write that character in the opening interview scene, just to explore what it was sort of about. And it was like a 10-page scene that we wrote, and I gave those pages to Rooney Mara, and she said that she really loved this idea in this world. And she said, okay, I really want to be in this film. And then I was like, oh shit, well now I gotta write a really good girl part.
You wrote a good girl part.
Yeah, so it's like two 32-year-old guys trying to write a really good female part. So we focused on that a lot, and I think for us, she became the emotional sort of focal point to the piece, and then the idea of the Will character and sort of seeing him becoming the audience's eyes through this story, we felt like that was the best way into it.
Jason, I want to ask you about taking this role. This is the second dramatic part you've done in a row after the end of the tour. I see you as a real film noir kind of guy now, because this is like a detective story when you're investigating what is truth. Can you talk about shifting your career from comedy to these more dramatic parts?
Sure. Hey everyone, thanks for coming out tonight. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, well, for me, which we were just talking about outside, when my TV show ended, I entered that show at 24 years old, and when I finished, I was 34, and I realized... Yeah, yeah. Well, I just realized that I was in an entirely different place than I was when I entered into that thing. And with a little bit of distance, I realized that it's sort of the role of an artist to check in with where you are in your life at any given point. Because my job, I view it now, after talking to people I really admire, is to be going through real personal stuff and allowing an audience to see it. And so I just realized it's been a while since I checked in, you know. I did Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and that did really, really great things. But I really went down that road for a long time, and at some point I was like, you know what? Like, not so scared of girls anymore. I should start doing stuff that's more reflective of being a grown man, really, who's trying to figure stuff out.
Like I said, I think you're like Fred McMurray. You're going to do the blubber comedy, and now you're going to do the detective stuff.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. I still have a pretty good hairline.
Charlie, can you talk about the use of time in your film? Because I think that's sort of an interesting element that you play with.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just don't want to be living in the present. I don't know. Yeah, I think I visualize a lot in my head, whether it's memories or picturing what something could be, and I think, I don't know, I just think about that a lot, and so I think this idea of that we're sort of stuck in this loop, trying to trying to do better in the next life. It just became really interesting to us pretty early on in writing the script. We kind of had the first act and the third act. We knew where we wanted the Will character to end up, and then we had no idea what the second act was going to be. So it was about filling that in. But yeah, I don't know. I just think for me, it's just a place that my mind sort of wanders, and I think, you know, I like to play in this sort of grounded sci-fi space, I guess, which is about, for me, focusing on honesty of character, and letting the sort of sci-fi be the backdrop almost to the world. So,
well, it's that reality fantasy duality that you have in the film. That
yeah.
You're a realist looking at something in a very sort of
Right.
fantastical, you know, or non-linear.
Right. Yeah, and I think for me, like, I always want to play with this idea of the audience saying, "What if this happened?" So I think, you know, in the one I love, I won't give it away if you haven't seen it, but there's a question very early on of, what if this happened to me and my significant other? What would we do? And again, it plays in fantasy, but it's but yeah, we believe it. I think as an audience, okay, what would I do in that situation? And I think the same was with this film. It's like, okay, well, what if this happened? You know, what would my thoughts be? And I think if you keep it grounded, then you can kind of take the sci-fi or the fantasy element as far as you want to take it.
Jason, I want to ask you about the morality of the character. He's sort of a voice of reason in the film. He's sort of a moral compass, but then he sort of wavers. What was it like to play that, and what was your process in doing that?
Well, it's a really interesting question. Is like, what becomes so important that you are willing to violate your own morality? And I thought that had to be a really compelling love story between Rooney and I, so that when the moment, you've all seen the movie now, I'm not giving it away, when the moment comes to put your money where your mouth is, where the right thing to do is to dismantle that machine, he can't do it, for really what are selfish reasons.
Right.
And I thought that was a really interesting journey, to have somebody arrive just really sure that the right thing to do was to put an end to something, and finally realize, like, oh, I really relate to what my father has been going through all of a sudden. I'm chasing this for personal reasons, yeah.
I'm going to open up to the audience for some questions. And I'm going to go with you because I can see you.
Awesome.
To lights.
Yeah, hi, my name's Tristan.
Interesting.
I'm from State McDowell, and I just wanted to ask, so sorry, this is super, like, ambiguous or like vague question, but it's for both of you, kind of. So I want to direct, and one thing that I really want to ask both the director and an actor is, and if you want to talk about this movie or any movie that you worked on, is there something that, as a director, it was just kind of like a breakthrough, aha, like this was a really difficult note to give, or same thing as an actor, like what was that one thing that a director did or said that was just like really helped you get into that character, feel where you needed to be?
I mean, I've only made 2 things, so mine's probably pretty short. I try to never play the director role, which I think my instincts early on at film school were to be like, okay, what does a director do? What am I supposed to say? I try to be as human and real as possible. So any conversation that I have with actors, and I mean, this was my second film, and the cast that I worked with is like, now that I think about it more, it's like insane that I got to work with these people. But yeah, it's insane that Redford's in this film, and yeah, but so for me it was less about, okay, well, how, like, what's some great thing I'm gonna say to Redford or Jason or Rooney. It's more like, I don't know, we kind of all came together in a way that's like, let's just have discussions, let's get on the same page, let's talk about these characters, let's talk about the story, let's talk about the scene, and play and find it. So for me, it's about kind of coming together with this funny group of people, and us all kind of putting our heads together and figuring it out together. And then for me, you know, as someone who cares a lot about visual storytelling, I do all of my work in prep. and I storyboard pretty much the whole thing. I have a lot of conversations with my DP, and I sort of create the film beforehand, and then I see how the scene's playing out in rehearsal, and a lot of times I just kind of throw out what I had planned before because something else, comes out of it. But yeah, to me, it's about having that, doing that work, and then being able to adapt to whatever happens on set.
Well, my first really formative experience with the director was when I was doing Freaks and Geeks with Judd Apatow, and we would have guest directors who would direct each episode, and we were all really young, and we were really new. And it was a lot of our first thing, our first-ish thing. And I remember a really specific moment that is funny, but has really stuck with me, where we had a guest director, and I was 20, and I was doing a scene that I thought I was doing real good. And then the director came up and he's like, "That's good, but I'd like you to refocus your energy towards the outside." I'm like, okay. So we do it again, and I'm pretty sure I did it good. And then he comes back, he's like, "That's good, but really, really, refocus your energy towards the outside." I'm like, okay. And then I just hear Judd Apatow, who's also behind the monitors, go, "He means louder." And that made sense to me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, he just wants it louder. Like, I'm happy to do it louder. You don't have to, like, I'm not sensitive about this. Like, and I get some idea of artistic tiptoeing and all that, but I've always been, and Charlie and my relationship is like this, I'm much better with louder than refocus your energy towards the outside. So there was that moment. Because I learned at that moment, just like Judd was going to treat me like that, I want to be like that for the director, where the director can just say louder or faster, and it saved everybody a lot of time. And then the other thing was on End of the Tour, when James Pomsel cast me for it. And honestly, I did not feel, I don't know why he had chosen me. It was a great honor to play David Foster Wallace. If any of you are fans of his, he's a brilliant, brilliant man. And I asked James, before I said yes, I said, "Why do you want me to do it?" And he said, "You can do this." He said, "Every time I watch you act, even when you're doing comedy, there's something very sad behind your eyes." And like, I instantly felt like someone could see me. I felt embarrassed, you know what I mean? Like, oh, he can see. He sees the in part. And, but really that to me, and I feel the same way about Charlie, like, I realized, oh, that's what a director is. Like, that's somebody who sees this world, this art in a way that is different than just like setting up shots. He has an artistic instinct. So those were two things for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hi. So I have two parts to my question. The first one is about the filmmaking process and how it affected your own beliefs about the afterlife. Were you questioning things? Were there discussions that were had? The second part to my question, I hate to be that person, but my sister is in college. She can't be here. She loves you, Jason, so much, and I was wondering if I could like record you saying "I" or something, like shouting out my sister.
Do you want me to do the second question? Oh, she's not a fan of me. Oh, sorry. I'll just do the first one.
She's campaigning to be president of her theater club?
Yes, like really hard at Penn State University, Penn State main campus, and she's really nervous. And
You should do like a plug for her or something.
Yeah, but I don't know if I agree with her beliefs. You know what I mean? Next thing you know, I'm on a campaign for.
She likes you.
Okay.
So her name's Christy Fisher.
Okay.
We all get that?
Are you recording now? You have to say action or something.
Action.
Hey,
Yeah,
Christy
louder.
Fisher.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going great.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, but yeah, to both of you though, like the idea of like the afterlife, and was there any religious talk at all that happened? Like, how did you like work on that?
Religious talk. Do you want to go first?
Is your Jewish mother happy you're a doctor now?
Does she happen to have a doctor?
You're a neurologist.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's so funny. Well, I'll just answer my part, because my part is quick. I think one of the big mistakes, one of the big problems in the world is that we don't all acknowledge that any perspective we have on the afterlife is a guess. Right. That we're all just guessing, and some people are more confident in their guesses than others, but I mean, we just don't know. And so I just really think that all you can do is try to be nice to everybody around you and then hope for the best.
Yeah. In terms of, I mean, of course we had discussions about religion and should that be sort of included in this piece, and we definitely had a draft that started to delve into religion and other things too. I think we had so many different drafts where we go down these wormholes of, okay, well, what do we want to explore? It's such a massive idea. I think religion opened it up even bigger. And I didn't have like a strong belief to include religion in this, and a strong point of view of what my belief system is. So I just didn't go into that. Of course, there could be a whole other movie that's about that with this premise, but I feel like if I sort of opened that jar a little bit, it would have exploded. So I didn't go into that very much. But yeah, I did it change the way I view the afterlife? Not really, because I think about it a lot more, I guess is how it's changed. I think for me, my head is so much about having to create something and make people feel something. So it's less about I'm exploring my belief system and more, okay, well, how do I want people to feel after this? What do I want people to talk about after this? And for me, the sort of point of making films right now is I want people to think and question and debate and have different experiences watching this movie. You know, some people will have a clear idea of what they think it means or what the end means, and other people will have a totally different idea. I'm trying to achieve that because I think it makes you think, and I want to bring that into the movies I make. That's important to me.
I think you were successful.
Thank you very much.
Hi. I just have a question. I know a lot of people here are. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
I just have no idea what you're on. Going into entertainment and things. I was wondering, so we get a lot of advice about getting our foot in the door and being humble and things like that. I was wondering if you could offer some sort of, if you have any weird advice or abnormal advice that we might not usually get that you could offer.
Can you raise your hand just so I can see where you are?
Yeah, we
There
can't see
you
you.
are.
You're black.
Well, Charlie and I have been talking about this a little bit amongst ourselves and in Q&As, but I would do as much as you can to eliminate the need to ask for permission. You can write, you know, writing is something you do not need permission for. It's one of the things that Judd taught me when I was really young. He said the only way you're going to make it is if you write your own material. He said in that same next sentence was because you're a weird dude. But it was the best advice I've ever gotten. I've had 2 or 3 times in my career where I could have not worked again. And I watched that happen to people. But the one thing I had in my back pocket was that I could write. And I could always dig myself out of a hole or a flop with writing a script. So I would do that, and I would get a bunch of like-minded friends together and start making stuff.
Yeah. Are there film students? A lot of film students here? Okay. My advice was, or my path was, I tried to make this script that Justin and I wrote. It was like a $3 million budget. We tried to make it for 5 years. We had cast. We had a really good cast. It fell through. We had money. That fell through. And then Mark Duplass gave me the shot of, let's just create something and go shoot it for no money. And we made the one I love out of that, which is literally, we had a location that we could shoot at. We went to the location, we started to walk around this house, and we wrote a story that could fit this location, which is such an odd way to make a movie, but it's a very practical way. So my advice always to film students, because it is so difficult for someone to give you millions of dollars to go make your movie, is write something that is contained, that's a really interesting story, really interesting characters, so it makes you focus on story and great performances, and go shoot it. And you can now. You can with Kickstarter and these different things. I mean, look at Sean Baker, who made Tangerine. He shot it on an iPhone. I mean, there are so ways to just go out and make your own art now. And my advice is to work on one of those scripts. Start to put that together now, so that when it's ready, you can just go out and shoot it.
Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Let's go over on this side. Yes, and? Go ahead.
Oh, hey, good movie, by the way. You got A minus?
Thanks.
A minus.
A minus? I'll take it. But what?
Why not an A?
Yeah, why not?
Right,
Yeah,
rub,
okay.
rub it back.
So I was wondering, given the hyper-sensational reality we live in due to Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat, do you actually think it's possible for a global event such as, 4 million suicides to take place in this reality?
Yeah, it was definitely a play on that, because Justin and I don't know, we were just looking at how news spreads now, and it's so fucking fast, and it's so intense, and it hits all at once before facts are even there, and we believe it, and we have strong opinions, and then it kind of goes away pretty quickly. But it's such an intense initial kind of rush, and so that was definitely a play on today's society, and that if the afterlife is proven, but we didn't know exactly where, but it is guaranteed, it's scientifically proven, would people take their own life? And we came up with in the entire world that 4 million people, which sounds like a lot, but is a small percentage of our world, would do that.
I'll get you here.
Did you always have Netflix in mind as a platform, and did that sort of change the way that you filmed or acted, or what were limitations and freedoms that you had with Netflix?
That's an awesome question. Her
Yeah.
question was, Her question was, did we always have Netflix in mind, and how did it affect our process?
No, we didn't. So Netflix came on, I had been talking to them quite a bit in the pre-production process. So the idea that we were going to be working with them was definitely there. But I always shot this with the idea that it was going to be seen on a screen. And that's why for Jason and I, it's really important for us to come to different cities and screen the movie and have people be able to see it on a big screen, because I do believe in that experience, but I also believe in what Netflix is doing, and ultimately, while we were shooting, we made a deal to have it be a Netflix original, which is a worldwide release, and the reason that I feel like this film works really well for that is, I think it's two things. One, I think it's a film that if you watch a second time, it's a very different experience. My favorite film, or one of my favorite films of last year, was Arrival, and I loved it the first time. Yeah, I had nothing to do with it, but I watched it the first time and I loved it, and then I watched it the second time and I appreciated how genius it was. Again, I'm not going to say that I made the same film, but there is something about, when you have these sort of endings that reveal something more than what you understood for the first, 2/3 of the film, it's definitely a different experience the second time and makes you think. And then also, what's incredible with Netflix is on March 31st, it will go out to 160 countries, all different types of people, different cultures, different ideas, and this is that kind of movie. It's a movie that I think globally, it's a question that we all think about. And so for me, the idea that people all across the world are going to see it is a pretty incredible thing. And I think it's tough with indie movies these days, where a lot of times, even with known actors in your film, it'll open in 50 theaters, and a small percentage of people will see it. And so for me, I really, the idea of eyeballs seeing this film was really important for me.
Try and get somebody else in the back. Yes.
Okay. It must have occurred to you that there's two ideas to your premise. One is that there's an afterlife. The other is that we can recognize that there's an afterlife. And if that's true, then that means there's no afterlife. Because in fact, there is no afterlife. Life is just continuous. What that suggests is that the big issue is not the afterlife, but what is this life? And I think, interestingly, people are likely, if such a scenario emerged, as you suggest it does in your script, then people would commit suicide. A lot of people would commit suicide because the very fabric of their life will have collapsed. I wonder if that occurred, if that's something
Well, I don't know if this is a direct answer to your question, but for me, when I read the script and started tackling the material, there was, as opposed to a lot of what literally is happening in the movie, there was a really great metaphor at play that I really related to. There's this feeling that I have been saddled with my whole life that is a feeling that I might describe as anywhere but here, or anything but this. And it's the kind of feeling that is like, oh, if I only lived in that town, my life would be better. Or if I only had that job, my life would be better. Or oh, if I had that other relationship, I would, and I'm gonna act on that now. I'm gonna break up with who I'm dating and go try that relationship. Or I'm gonna sell my house and move to that city. And what you find out whenever you act on that impulse is that you take yourself with you. You always travel with your own baggage. And that to me is what the movie was about. This metaphor of if you could push the reset button and go to another plane of existence, why would you expect it to be any different? Because you're your own problem. The problem lies inside. That's what the movie was about for me.
We have time for one more question. I'll get you.
I'm a cinema studies student. I was wondering if there was any specific inspiration that you said your writing partner had to make this film. For some reason, when I was watching it, I connected it back a little bit to Eternal Sunshine and Spotless Mind. I was wondering, do you have any of those connections?
Yeah, Eternal Sunshine was definitely an inspiration. I mean, for me, mostly in that, what I love about that film is it's such a simplistic idea and theme, which is a guy trying to get over a girl, and then a girl trying to get over a guy. And then the way that they explore that idea is so powerful visually, and also I think because of that, we feel something so much more for this very basic idea. So I want to make movies like that, because I want to make people feel in that way. So Eternal Sunshine was one in this sort of grounded, sci-fi-esque vein. Visually, I looked at The Master a lot. That was something, the color palette, the sort of...
character goes from dark to light, and it's some progressive.
Yeah.
It's to begin with, and it's got bright pictures in the end.
Sure, I'll take that. But yeah, and a bunch of, I put together this sort of visual book. That's another thing that I would suggest to people is I start to put together this book, and it's really for myself of like, okay, well, how does this look? How does this feel? And it becomes a pretty big book of a lot of images, and then by the time that we're starting to make the movie, then I give that book to all department heads and my DP and the actors, and I think I just looked at it recently, and it's literally, it's the film that I made, and it all came from, sort of 6 months of really thinking about that and piecing it together. So, but yeah, Eternal Sunshine, Martha, Marcy May, Marlene was one as well, for some of the cult stuff, and yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, you guys.